I'm Dyches Boddiford. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, actually Marietta, which is a suburb of Atlanta. I've lived here since the 1967 when I went to Georgia Tech. Did undergraduate and master's degree there, and worked for a company, well actually two different companies, after school until I went full-time doing the real estate.
Well, let's see. Let's go back to Georgia Tech. So you did physics.
Yeah, undergraduate physics, master's in computer science.
And you did some work with NASA.
Did work for NASA while I was at Georgia Tech.
That makes you a rocket scientist. So when I've always introduced you as a rocket scientist, everybody just kind of rolls their eyes.
Yeah.
You really are a rocket scientist. You're a physicist that worked for NASA.
Well, we did. I was an undergraduate student when I worked for NASA, so I wasn't one of the primary drivers, but the group that I worked with was Advanced Nuclear Rocket Concepts. And it was interesting. I learned a lot from that in addition to the classes.
And do you have any of your family members that are also involved in real estate?
My daughter told me right when she got out of Georgia Tech, or was getting out of Georgia Tech for her undergraduate degree, that she didn't want to work in an office, and she wanted to live in the Atlanta area. She had a lot of family and friends here. And she'd like to try the real estate for a while. I tried to convince her to go work for somebody else to find out why she really wanted to do the real estate.
And you and I argued about that, and I thought that was a silly. You're a very smart man, but I thought that was pretty silly because she was like leaning toward real estate. I was like, why would you want her to do anything else?
Yeah, well, I wanted her to not want to go to a job later on, and so she talked me into letting her try the real estate. I put her together with several investors, including you and Kim, and
Danny and Ann,
and a couple other people. And she really enjoyed doing the real estate and did it for several years, and still has several rentals that she holds and wants to add to the portfolio as time goes by. And some of those rentals have already gotten paid off, and she's been doing this 10 years now.
You're right at 10 years. I think she started in either 11 or 12, but I think it was 11.
11, yeah. She graduated in 11, so that's when she started.
You know, I have videos of her, her very first foreclosure auction, the very first time she bid at foreclosure auction, outdoor knocking, the very first property she won at auction. Okay, it is June 7th, 2011. This is the foreclosure auction in Bartow County. This is going to be Dorsey Boddiford's first foreclosure auction where she's going to be bidding. And Dorsey, there's Dorsey, and she's at her first auction. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great.
Embarrassed about being on camera?
Yes.
But this is kind of neat.
Yeah, pretty cool. Bank of America was $51,003. $51,003 going once. $51,100. Bank of America, I'm going to bid $82,001. $82,001 going once. $82,001 twice. Go Heather! $82,001 three times. Sold to Bank of America.
Dorsey Boddiford, that was the first time you've ever been on a property. How does that feel?
I was just going to say, where are you going, Dorsey?
I'm going to go to Disney World, yes. And we also have Proud Papa here who is watching his daughter at work on her first foreclosure auction, so this is a great deal. How do you feel about her?
Great.
Okay, that's it, right?
You're so wordy. So when did you start investing in real estate?
Bought my first property in 1980, and it happened when I was working for a company, again here in Atlanta, and I couldn't see a lot of growth coming down the road, and I was looking for something else to do on the side to build up some reserves. And I kept looking at real estate as being a way that I could get into something that was needed by the public, didn't require a lot of cash down. I could generate a lot of sweat equity in the property, and it was easy to find capital to invest from either institutions or from other investors. I looked at stocks. I looked at actually having a business. I didn't really want to work in the inside 40 hours.
What are
a
some of the
week.
businesses you looked at? I didn't know that.
I can't even remember some of them now, but things like simple as a plumbing business or electrical, being an electrician and running my own little electrical business, to having a business with inventory like equipment. I looked at a lot of them, but never really got down to the real nitty-gritty of saying, is this a business I'm going to invest in? Because I kept coming back to the real estate as being a place that I had some knowledge. I grew up on a farm. On a farm, you fix things yourself. You don't call people to come in and fix it normally. And we ran a couple of fairly large acreage farms, so we had a lot of equipment, plus we had people that lived on the farm with us. So I had some exposure to fixing toilets and septic tanks and that
Hydraulics, diesels.
Yeah, yeah.
All the things that go with a big farm. Where did you grow up? Where were you? Where were you
Halfway
raised?
between Augusta and Savannah, a little town called Savannah, Georgia.
Savannah, Georgia.
Yeah, it was a farming community.
Did you pick real estate, or did it pick you? Was there a bug about it, or did it just make logical sense for you? Because it sounds almost like it made logical sense, but I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, I actually did the analysis, and I did the Ben Franklin T-bar. I know you like using that sometimes.
Yeah.
What was the pros and cons for the different things I was looking at? And the real estate gave me the most opportunities that I could see, and I didn't have to have a whole staff of people, so I didn't have to worry about employees, which I had experience with employees in the two companies that I was vice president in, and had employees. So I looked at this and said, well, this is a way I can just work by myself. If I need to pick up somebody part-time, I can pick up part-time and go from there.
When you first got started, what type of deals were you doing?
Rentals. That's how I started out. I quickly got into doing purchasing some notes, small notes. The notes back then were not nearly as large as they are today. There was a lot of little second mortgage notes, a lot of $2,000 and $3,000 notes that could be purchased. People understood selling notes, so I bought a few of those, and that's how I started learning about the business. And then over the years, I've done about any area you can think of in real estate. I had some experience in, and that kept it fresh for me. It wasn't. I could have probably built a nice portfolio much quicker than I did if I'd have just stuck to one line of investing. But I wanted to get experience in all the different kind of investments, and I did very well until I hit. You're going to probably ask me what the worst investment was, and I'll tell you right now, it was apartments. I bought a bunch of apartments just before the bank failures of the late 80s came about, and it ate my lunch. Literally working for a company, and I get my paycheck on Friday and rush to the bank to cash the check and pay bills for those apartments, and finally ended up paying the bank enough that they would release me from the loan that they had on the properties.
These days, what type of investing do you do?
These days I do mainly lending, and I help my daughter when she's looking at a property to buy. I'll help her out with the purchase, structuring it, and getting things cleaned up and ready to rent. I'm kind of semi-retired, though. My wife keeps asking me what part of semi-retired do you think is taking it easy.
I notice you sit at your desk. You're at your desk all day, pretty much every day. So for you to be retired, when I call you, you're always at your desk. That's not exactly retired.
No, that's not exactly retired, but that's where I have a lot of material that I'd like to read, newsletters and so forth, and like I said, I still got a lot of loans out there that I'm collecting on, and I try to keep up with what the people are doing. One good thing about making loans is it's an opportunity to watch somebody else do a deal and to give them input when they want it on doing the deal. And so it's almost like you're in the deal yourself, even though you're in a passive position.
Do you find that if someone comes to you for a loan, part of what that person gets is your knowledge, your experience, where you can help them make the deal better and safer?
If they want it. I don't try to push that on them because people have different attitudes about things. But especially a beginner, I try to watch over them more than I do the more experienced guys, because the beginner a lot of times makes mistakes that are very simplistic. They don't recognize it. They don't see it coming. So I'll be more apt to drop by and see how they're going. I don't go out and swing the hammer day in and day out with them, but go by and say, what are you thinking about doing here? What are you, have you run into any problems with this contractor or that contractor? Try to give them some pointers.
Well, when you say that you really don't go swing the hammer, you realize I have a lot of pictures of you with hammers and cleaning and jackhammers, and I do have these pictures, which I'm going to be showing what people are going to be looking at right now.
Mostly from those times when you were teaching Dorsey and y'all were working and I came out and you'd put a hammer in my hand.
What does your monthly schedule look like now? If you can kind of look at your monthly schedule, I know you spend a lot of time with lending, but what time do you kind of go to work, or what's your schedule look like?
Okay, well, you're acting like I go to work for the month, but at the beginning of the month is collections time for loans. All loans are supposed to be in our mailbox by the first of the month. There's reasons why you might want to have another date, but we have it on the first of the month. It works in our office. So therefore, anything that's late after the 5th day of the month, we can spend the time writing letters or making phone calls if I want to. I don't make many phone calls on collections, but mainly write letters. And I can try to keep up with who's having issues. Now, fortunately, most of the loans I make these days, I have people that I've dealt with for the last 20 or 30 or 40 years almost for some of them that I don't have to worry about. Mm-hmm. And they pay on a regular basis. The rest of the month is doing little projects, getting ready to do a class or taking one of my books that I want to update or clarify, add to, and jotting down. And otherwise, it's just, reading.
Let's talk about your books for a second, because they're known in real estate investing as the best written books, the best source of information. They're better written than what anybody else does. So how did you come up with the design? Because again, we talked about using Snagit yesterday, where you're able to annotate your documents line by line by line. How did you come up with that format?
Well, first of all, I've done a bunch of books because I wanted to learn something. I don't do a class where I haven't done whatever I'm teaching in the past. Mm-hmm. So when I do a book for a class, I want to have it so that when someone goes home, they can read and get the information out of there that they can use in day-to-day investing. I'm a student of Jack Miller's. Back in the early 80s, I used to go to Jack's, and his books were written out in detail in a lot of respects, and sometimes he'd skip over something, how to do something. And I just felt like if I was going to be an investor, that I needed to fill in the holes to make sure that I've got the information, and if I'm going to teach it later on, which I wasn't planning to teach it from the beginning. I was 10 years into investing when I decided to teach, and we can talk about that later about how I got into it. But the books needed to be good to start with. I did not teach a class on a regular basis that did not have a book that I felt comfortable with someone taking and reading and getting the information out of that book. The book was more important than actually the presentation, which is, sounds wrong, but if you stop to think about it, the book they took home, the presentation they heard one time.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted that repetition that they had from reading the book to be all the information they needed, or at least the majority of the information they needed to do whatever they're trying to do.
How big of a role did your mom and dad play in your life as a real estate investor and in your life as a businessman?
Well, my dad was a farmer, but he also had knowledge of electrical work. My uncle, who was a manager of Millhaven Plantation, which was a 22,000 acre plantation that was close by to our farms, would call my dad to come do specialty electrical work on machinery, like three-phase motors and that type of thing. So I'd go with him on Saturdays and during the summer on some of these jobs. And I learned a good bit about electricity, which interested me, got me interested in physics, and I went to tech and studied that. So my dad just gave me encouragement that I could learn anything I needed to learn, because he didn't go to college. He went to World War II in the South Pacific and came back, and he took a few classes that the VA put on. And he learned all this, and to the point that even the local electrical company sometimes called him up to come look at an electrical problem that they couldn't figure out. The electrical co-ops in the country, I don't know if you know much about those.
I don't.
So anyway, that was pretty much my dad. And I watched him work the employees, the guys that worked on the farm, which was another reason I decided I didn't want employees, because some of them didn't show up and some of them came in drunk every now and then. So anyway, that was pretty much my dad's side. My mom was just a good mom that encouraged me to do anything I wanted to do and just do it well, and try to generate a good reputation. So,
as we record this, how old is your mom?
My mom is 100 years old. She will turn 101 in January 2022.
And you said your dad was in World War II. What did he do?
He was a waist gunner on a B-17.
And you said in the Pacific?
In the Pacific, New Guinea, Solomons.
It was a hard place to maintain aircraft.
Yeah.
A lot harder than England.
Yeah.
When you started, going back to 1980, when you did your first deal, when you were first getting started, could you imagine, did you see the level of success you would have as a real estate investor?
No, I really didn't see into the future, other than thinking, okay, I'll have 4 or 5 properties here, and I didn't know if it'd go beyond that. And that was another reason that I was looking for different areas of real estate to invest in, because I just didn't really know what I needed to do. And quickly I learned that I could generate a job by doing flipper properties or flipping mortgages, or I could invest by having the rental properties and build equity over the long term, which is where you build your wealth. And that insight was like a light bulb going off. But it was like 4 years into investing in real estate when I did have that revelation. And so then I started concentrating on having a few good rental houses and concentrated on getting them free and clear, while I generated a little bit of income from doing the flipper properties. Now this is after 1991, which is when I went full time. That I did that because when I was working for somebody else, there was the income I needed to put a roof over my head and food in my mouth for myself and my family.
Okay, so describe back then when you were starting, what were you like as a starter? How much did you know? Because we just talked about, did you see the level of success you would have? But let's go back to the early days. What type of deals, you said you were doing some flipping and rental. So talk about the early days, the deals, the structures you were using.
Okay, well, let me just give you the first 3 deals that I did. I'll tell you how it happened. I was I decided to do the real estate. I took a weekend class, a guy that came through Atlanta teaching about making money with real estate.
Do you remember who it was?
I'm trying to remember his name now. He's from Canada. What's his name? He was the only one teaching it back then.
Don't remember.
You would know if I said his name.
Lowry?
Yeah, Al Lowry.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. He came through and sold the class. It was going to happen a couple of weekends down the road, and class time comes and it's some other guy teaching it. But he did all right, and we had a 3-ring binder with a bunch of pages in it with just bullet points. That was his manual. So I wrote like a wild man the whole weekend, things he was saying. And it just never was a question once I started that I was going to do something in real estate. So I started looking for properties and did driving neighborhoods looking for deals. And it had to be a good deal because I didn't have a whole lot of money put up. And I thought I started analyzing properties, and it seemed like in the low income areas were the best cash flows. That's an issue. We can come back to that a little bit later. Mm-hmm. But so I had these areas I was looking for properties in. So I drove the afternoons that I could. I had the time off to do, and on weekends. And I must have. The guy taught that you need to make 100 offers to get a property. And I probably made at least 40 or so offers before I got my first acceptance. The first property I bought was a VA foreclosure. And I bought it from the VA, so that wasn't a big deal about part of the driving. I just found the property. And I bought it because there was a second house on the lot, but it was in sad shape and it was not rented. It was in Marietta.
Define the second house on the lot.
The lot was on the corner, two streets. It was a regular frame house facing one street that had people living in it, and the second house faced the other street, but it's nothing but almost a shell, a little one-bedroom property.
Yeah.
So I bought it because I thought I could make that second house into a livable unit, which I did. And so that was the first one. Next day, I go and buy a property that was only $6,000, but I didn't have $6,000. And I borrowed the money from another real estate investor that I knew that financed me at 25%, because remember, this was 1980.
So when people are upset at paying 15 to 18%, you just really don't understand that, because the first time you did it was 25%.
25%. And I had an amortized loan with 25% to pay off, I think in 3 years, 4 years, something like that. Anyway, so I got that property. The next day, I bought another owner-occupied, owner-finance property for $24,000. And that had a 5-year balloon on it. So that's how I got into my first 3 properties 3 days in a row.
So how did you already know how to do owner financing before you did owner financing, or did you just figure it out?
The owner financing was not a hard thing to learn. I learned that as part of the weekend the
Lowry thing.
Yeah, the Lowry thing, when they came through town. They talked about financing, and I'm already mathematically oriented, so the mortgage fascinated me. And of course, then I bought my own house and had got a mortgage on it, so,
So you figured it out.
Yeah.
So and you already answered the question, because the second part of that question is, did you have all the cash and know-how you needed to do deals when you were starting?
I had a little bit of know-how and a little bit of cash.
Okay, so
And remember, I said that I was looking for investments where I didn't need a lot of capital, and they would accommodate sweat equity, and that's what these did.
and again, growing up on a farm, you're not scared of hard work.
Oh no.
When you were starting out, what were your biggest hurdles?
Didn't have any contractors. I had to get just the yellow pages or other real estate investors' references to get decent contractors. And bookkeeping, I guess. Just learning how to keep books and do the taxes, because this went from very simple taxation to a much more complex taxation structure. So I had to learn that because I had to save money, as much money as I could on taxes.
Well, one of the jokes that we make about you is that you read tax code for fun. Where did that come from? Where did that ability to come from? Because that's its own language and it's tough.
Yeah, came from not getting somebody to answer questions properly. I'd ask an accountant or a CPA a question about real estate, and they'd give me some answer that didn't make a whole lot of sense, and I didn't feel like that was really the right answer. And so I started reading the books that they had, Master Tax Guides, which explained the different parts of the code. And then I found that, amazingly, if I went to the code section, I could understand it when I read it about 5 times. And so I started actually reading the code itself, because what was interesting to me is that sometimes there were things that would come up that I hadn't even expected that was a benefit.
Tell me about your most favorite deal ever. And if you have 2 or 3, you can do that too.
All right, I'll tell you about a couple. One was a property on Edisto Island in South Carolina that a partner of mine flagged me on and let me know there was acreage there. I believe it was 13 acres, and it was on a creek that led out into the ocean. Well, the good part about that is it was a deep water creek, so you could take pretty good sized boats. So I decided we could build a subdivision. So I talked to the building department, talked to a couple of developers around there, a real estate agent that also had done some development. So I got the real estate agent that also did some development. He partnered with another person and myself, and we bought that 13 acres of land, engineered it with 11 lots, and roads in through it, and a dock that was 110 feet long.
It's a long dock.
Well, the walkway out to the dock was 400 feet. We had to go over marsh and, to get to deep water, but it was worth it. It was worth it. So and that was where I had my first court suit, where the neighbors said that we were building a marina, and we didn't have a permit for it, which was ridiculous, and that got dropped real quick. But I could say it was the first lawsuit I dealt with. But we sold those lots. That was early 2000s, late 1990s, early 2000s. We sold those lots, and we made enough for the 3 of us to come out very, very comfortably on that. And the development was a lot of fun to do. Name the roads, go and see where the houses would sit on the lots.
Wait, how'd you name the roads? How did you?
Well, there's a grass called Spartina grass that grows in marshes, and it's called the subdivision Spartina Bay. And then we had the roads. I don't even remember the names we came up with now, but it was just fun sitting over dinner with a couple of glasses of good drink and coming up with some names.
I wish I'd been a part of that. I could have helped you name those streets, and it'd been a lot more interesting.
It would have been interesting.
You wouldn't have gone with it,
No,
but it'd have been
no,
interesting.
No, it wouldn't have. The other deal that I did was a problem property in an industrial park, and the property was about 7 acres, if I remember right, and it had a bunch of liens against it and a bunch of mortgages against it, Bank Boston being one of the largest. And it turns out the owner had walked on it and left it with tax liens and of course this Bank Boston loan that was on it. And he had some other collateral that Bank Boston had. So we were able to deal with getting a tax deed on the property, which came in front of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then negotiating with Bank Boston to release and just go after the other collateral, and getting the other liens. And the interesting part about that was one of the lot lines was disputed lot line. It was between a tract of land and a cemetery from pre-Civil War time.
There was a cemetery on the land?
There was
This
a cemetery.
pre-cemetery?
No, it was a land line
Got it.
between the cemetery and this tract. So we came to an agreement, gave them a little bit of land, so that they made sure they had all the graves on the property. So we got that all straightened out, and we ended up we're dividing it, surveying it out, dividing it into 2 tracts and selling them to companies that wanted to build warehouses and offices there.
Did you like doing that?
That was fun. It was fun. I mean, it was all high level work. It wasn't, the most hands-on was being out there with a surveyor to talk about where we would want the corners to be, if at all possible. And when there was questions, sometimes you can kind of get things put in the right place.
Okay, just a few minutes ago, you were talking about those first 3 deals you did.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just told us about, these favorite deals that involved a lot more work, know-how, knowledge, money, skills. How did you go from that investor that you were when you started to the investor that was able to do the big deals?
Well, the first big deal I did was also the worst deal I ever did. That was the apartment buildings. It got too big for my pants too quick. I had only done single families, hadn't even done a duplex yet. And I jumped into 32 unit apartment building. And it ate my lunch. I ended up putting a few thousand in, and then putting quite a few thousand more in to get the problem solved. I lost, not a paper loss, but a real loss of $110,000. When $110,000 was a lot of money, and meant a lot of money, and a lot for me to have.
You had 3 girls to feed at the time too.
Well, I had at the time, I had 2.
Well, I'm thinking Debbie too.
Along with, yeah, but Laurie
wasn't here yet.
Yeah, it was Debbie and Dorsey. Yeah, and it was tough, and that's when I was saying I was cashing checks and going and paying off bills, trying to get the apartment. What I did was I did not realize apartments were a business. I thought they were an investment. I thought I could just get the apartments, put in a manager, and I could still go my merry way doing other things, and the manager would handle it. No, it's not the way it looks, because the tenants in an apartment building are much different than a tenant in a single family house.
How so?
Tenant in a single family house wants everybody to think they own the house. So they'll, in most cases, in a good neighborhood where it's not mostly rentals, they'll keep up the yard, they'll clip the bushes, they'll take care of it pretty much like someone that actually owned the house would be, because they like everybody to think that they might own that house.
Yeah.
And they would like to own a house at some point in the future. So they'll take care of it more like theirs.
Yeah.
Apartment building attracts a different kind of person. Apartment building attracts users. They'll use things and go. They don't care. Everybody knows they don't own the apartment building, so they don't care about how things look. And of course, the first time something breaks, you get a call to come fix it, and it's usually something they broke. So that's the difference in tenants. But even though that's the difference in tenants, it's still like a business supplying a product, which is the apartment, for the person to live in, and they will move on a skinny notice. Whereas with people in single-family houses tend to stay a lot longer. So after I learned my lesson there, and I started going back to the single-family houses and doing rentals. And I still had some single-family rentals, but I didn't have but a couple by that time because I'd sold off everything. I didn't realize how I needed to hold on to rentals.
Did you know Pete back then?
I met Pete at a Jimmy Napier conference in the early 80s. And the first thing Pete told me is I had to go hear Jack Miller. So yes, I've known Pete for a number of years because every time I showed up at one of those classes, he was there as a student as well, even though he was a teacher.
I was just curious that when you started selling off your single families, if he gave you mountains of grief too.
He would have if we had been that close. Pete and I did not get that close until the 90s. I was in awe of Pete. I always enjoyed listening to his presentations and his deals that he did, but I couldn't understand some of them, which is also another reason I learned how to do a lot of those, because I had to learn what I knew was out there, you know.
So describe your estate building years. So you're no longer a starter. You got your legs under you. You're building up to get financially free. Talk about the types of deals you were doing, because you branched out far and wide from just the single family houses.
Yeah. Again, I've said before that I wanted to do every part of real estate that I could do, just to get experience and to see if it's something I really enjoy doing. Like when I did the lending, I liked the lending a lot, but I didn't have a whole lot of money to lend. So I kept doing that in the background while I tried something else. I was building toward going full time and having enough to retire on eventually. How much that was, I should have had it in my mind exactly what the numbers were, but I didn't come to the point of actually having target numbers until about 20 years ago, probably. It's when I started really getting serious about that. That was my opportunity to determine where I wanted to end up. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, by having a target, I was able to go toward that target and actually overshoot the target, and did much better by multiple than I expected.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, and I think you remember the story because I've repeated it a lot. At the end of '97, at the end of 2007, I was in one of your classes and I asked you if you lost everything and had to start over and you could only use one deal structure, what would you use and why? Yeah.
If I had started in 1980 doing this, I would have been way beyond where I am now. But the laws have changed. It's the idea is to buy mobile homes for cash, and at the time you could buy them for a couple $100, really, and turn around and do some fix up to them, because the quality of the person that you get into the home is dependent on the quality of the home itself. Mm-hmm. If you do a handyman, especially, you're going to get a handyman that may get around to it, or may just be telling you he's going to get around to it. But if you fix it up for a family house and you own or finance the property for them, you can find people all day that will want to buy a house. And this would be houses in other people's parks, mobile homes in other people's parks. We did that. That was one of the investment areas I did in the late 80s and early 90s. And actually the thing that pulled me out of the apartment depression that I was in. And the apartments didn't dissuade me from real estate, because I knew that real estate was something that could make good money. So it was a matter of just working myself out of the hole. And I did that and did the mobile homes, and that's what I would do if I had to start over again. Because after we did a few hundred mobile homes, we were sitting pretty and were able to do the subdivision, able to put up over half the money it took to develop the subdivision. Buying the dirt and doing development.
One of the questions I asked you is, why did you move on past mobile homes? Remember your answer to that one?
Well, the mobile homes were too small chunks of money. I had a partner that wanted to kind of work out of being a day-to-day. I don't remember what reason I might have given you.
One of the reasons you gave me was you got bored.
Oh, well, that's true. That's true. Got bored. That's part of looking at different areas of real estate to see what I liked. Yeah, I kind of got bored. We were making real good money. We had enough sitting in the bank to do other kinds of deals. So instead of doing, a $5,000, $10,000 deal, which most of them were at that time, today they'd be a little bit more. I wanted to do something in the $100,000, $150,000, so that's why we moved on to something else. But yeah, and we went directly into that development, which is one reason I probably liked the development so much. It was so different from dealing with the mobile homes day in and day out.
So as you're being a full-fledged estate builder, building up the cash flow, the capital assets you would need so you didn't have to work anymore, what were some of the structures you were using? So you've got mobile homes going on, you're doing subdivisions, you're doing lending.
Yeah. What structures did I use?
You had single families.
Well, single families, you're still talking about the types of investment.
Yeah.
But as far as structures, I still did some owner finance. If I could
I guess I think more. I guess I'm looking for types of investments more so than types. Tools.
Okay.
Yeah, because you were doing a wide variety. You weren't just doing one thing.
No. I was doing the development. I was doing we did some vacation rentals and did VRBO. We did that. That was way before the what do you call it?
VRBOs and was Airbnbs.
Airbnb. It was before Airbnbs, but we did VRBOs and that was interesting. We did some build outs of condos that had been abandoned or foreclosed on. That's like doing a building, and it's not something I would suggest for everyone. It takes a good person to be able to control the supplies, the components that it takes to build, and get the trades in at the right time. It's a exercise in scheduling.
Yeah.
So, what else we did? Mobile home. We did mobile home subdivisions.
Yep.
We did 2 of those back in that time. We did the loans. We did mobile home parks. Did a couple of mobile home parks. Did tax deeds. Did a good bit of tax deeds, just not recently, but 10
In Georgia
years
or in
ago.
Carolinas or both?
Georgia and South Carolina and North Carolina, mainly South Carolina is where we did it. Those areas are with a glut of money now. So we said, and actually we had a foreclosure that had a tax lien on it, and it was going to tax sale, which we could have gone in and paid the tax sale, the tax bill off, and had it free and clear. But we found that there was a lot of people interested in the particular property, so we had it come up for foreclosure sale, and we held the tax deed on it. And it's ended up selling for more than the value of the property, just by us sitting there in control of holding and watching it. We didn't care if it came back to us or not. So we were able to sell it and not have to do any fix up or anything on it, just by letting the interest of the market play out.
And that's, again, that would have been a very hot market and people were bidding up.
Yeah, exactly.
What were your biggest obstacles as you're, again, being an estate builder, you're in the middle of all this. So I know you're working hard, long hours, lots of stuff, you're on the road. What were the biggest obstacles you faced?
Not enough hours in a day, you know. And sometimes not having enough cash, even though we were in good, we had good amounts of cash that we earned, we invested it. So a lot of times we didn't have the money to do something extra that we wanted to do, or to do a deal that came along that was really good.
So what'd you do? Where did the money come from?
Money came, if we did it. Now I use that as a reason to sit down and really assess whether we should be doing another deal, or should we just say, sorry, we're not interested, or pass it on to somebody else. But the ones that we did decide that we should do, that we needed to capture, we would go to other investors, and we paid friends of ours 11 and 12% for money when we needed it, depending on who it was. We also had a couple of investors from the mobile home days that invested in mobile homes with us, that would give us money at 7 or 8%, which at the time was bank
really
money.
cheap. Yeah, that was
bank loan capital. But I didn't like holding other people's money. You know, one thing that you always need to be careful of is a partner and a lender. You know, those are areas that could give you some issues down the road. You never know a partner, what their business acumen is, or what if they're going to take care of you, watch your back or not. You only know that after years of dealing with someone. Lenders are necessary, and all investors need to know some lenders that are other real estate investors and civilians.
So throughout the years, my guess is, well, let me ask, I don't know this. Did you ever hit a brick wall where you just thought, too tough?
You know, I heard you ask that question otherwise some other time, and I was thinking about it, and I hit a brick wall multiple times. Different things caused it, like the apartment buildings, whatever. The thing was, I had an attitude that anything can be overcome if the award at the end that you were targeting was still viable.
Yeah.
And so I never got to the point of being totally dissuaded. There was a time when I would have just gone over to the corner and sulked for a while, but it was a matter of just getting it out of the way so that I could say, okay, what's the problem and how can I take it in bite-sized chunks and solve it? So I never really felt like I hit a brick wall that I couldn't get through.
You're the first person that's answered that way? Pretty much everybody else I've talked to has said, you know, they hit the point where they're just sitting back and they just throw up their hands and said, that's it. And they would almost walk away. But there would be something that would, a voice, kick them in the head, they would come back for more.
Right.
Masochist maybe. But again, in your case, the only thing I can think of is this is the logical side of you, because you're one of the most logical people I've ever met in my lifetime. You think through problems, and one of the sayings I have that I use on myself all the time is focus on the solution, not the problem.
Right.
So you look at the problem, come up with a solution, and then don't think about that problem again. Don't harp on it. Just stay focused on that solution. I really got that from you and your line of thinking of how you approach different problems. When I would watch you have a problem, you would get to solution driven pretty fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I've not had anybody ask me that question before either.
you said that it was important to you to go free and clear on your properties.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this has been a topic of conversation I've had with Pete and a number of other investors. I had it with Randy Shelley yesterday, where we were talking about paying off some loans, and they were like, why would you ever want to pay it off? And for me and Kim, paying off our properties was very, very important. What made it important to you? Why was that important?
When you have enough, you have enough. And why do you need to have loans that can cause potential problems? I wanted to work toward not owing anybody anything. And right now, other than on a credit card or two for the 30-day installment cycle they got, it's the only money that I owe anybody. I paid off my personal residence, I paid off second residence, I paid off all the other expenses I had. I was fortunate enough to be able to send a daughter to Duke on paid, no scholarship. I wanted to be in that position. I didn't want to be constantly worrying about where the money was going to come from to pay a loan. And it makes me feel good, and I can sleep at night, and I know that anytime I want to say this is enough, I don't want to do anymore, I don't have to do anymore. You know, it's all a matter of comfort. Now, if I wanted to be efficient, I'd have mortgages on everything, especially if I expected inflation to come along. But I'm not building. I'm not a constant builder. I'm a maintainer now. If I wanted to go out and do a flipper property, I can go out and do a flipper property. If I want to just sit back and watch a football game, I can sit back and watch a football game. Nobody can tell me what I have to do.
Yep. There's a friend I have, a good friend, and I just talked to him 3 days ago, and he's having anxiety problems. He can't sleep at night. He's a very successful investor, experienced, been around for a long time, and he said this has him puzzled because he's at a point in time that he shouldn't be anxious about anything. He's very successful at what he does. And I don't think I said this, and I should have, and I probably will go back and say it now, is having the debt that you're carrying, because there's a lot of debt associated with what he's doing, because he's one of those ones, instead of paying off, let's keep the money working.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this was a lesson I learned mainly from you, is when I would do a deal, that deal had to stand on its own 2 feet. I'd borrow money to go do that deal, but I wouldn't go to my other properties and use them as collateral. Now, you and I have done deals before where I have used a couple of my properties that are paid for to do something very short term to redo it, just to go in and out of something.
Well, the point being, and what you're saying now too, is you don't want that one property to be a reason that you have a domino effect to take down another 2, 3, 5 properties, because you tied them all together with those loans or with that money. You want each property to stand on its own. So if you have a property with a good bit of equity in it, using some of that equity to buy, to get a loan to buy another property or whatever, might be just fine, but you have to analyze it.
Yep. And this is one of I think going free and clear was one of the most important lessons I learned from you. And again, that was our natural instinct anyway.
But Bill, you could be 10 times more wealthy if you went with the financing. Would you sleep 10 times better at night?
No.
Not at all. Not at all.
Because I remember going through 7 and 8 and 9 when we were trying to pay off. In 2008 we paid off our house.
Yeah.
Well, that was a tough time in 2008. And I had other uses for that money. And it was a subject to note that was on our house. So it was not even my note. But to get our home free and clear was a very important thing.
Yeah. One thing I tell younger investors, I shouldn't say younger, but beginning investors, is they need to work toward having a good portfolio of properties And that portfolio of properties is their forever properties. Now, forever property doesn't mean that it's necessarily that property forever. They may 1031 into another property. But they should have their safe properties that they don't touch. They keep paying off. And if they want to take some risk over here with a speculative property with a rehab and resale or foreclosure or whatever, do it. That's fine. But don't tie up anything in your protected portfolio. You just need to protect that for that long-term investment.
Okay, so you didn't face really one of the brick walls. You were always focused on solution and went at it. A lot of people do come face to face with this. I told you you're the first person I've talked to that really has not. What would be your advice to an investor? Let's say they're a starter or they're an estate builder, and they hit that wall, that tough spot. They buy that apartment complex that's just eating their shorts. What advice would you give them to keep going?
Well, if they're going to be successful in anything, they got to have grit. They got to have persistence. They got to know that they can solve the problem. And if they tell themselves there's always going to be problems, and this is just one of them, and I can get through this, and then diligently work to get through it instead of worrying about it, then they'll get through it. And it's easy to say, hard to do. I understand that. But you don't accomplish anything by going and pulling the covers up over your head and ignoring the problem.
Now that you're financially free, because you said you get choices now. How do you spend your time?
Well, it's been changing the last couple, 3 years. I still make some loans. I like working. I do a lot of paperwork. I read a lot. Both pleasure and technical materials. I go to the beach more than I used to. As a matter of fact, this year I spent 4 months over the summer at the beach. I've got my own little office up there as well. So
I didn't know that.
I spend some time.
I just thought you were on the back porch all the time.
No, the back porch is great because we look out over the water and just sit there and read and go back and forth between different books. I usually have 2 or 3 books I'm reading at the same time. Got to go out fishing sometime. So how do I spend my time? Well, I spend it like I spent it before, but I just have shifted more toward the recreational time. And I got a grandchild now I enjoy playing with. And I'm probably going to have some more grandchildren somewhere along the line here.
Pretty neat.
Yeah, it is.
To achieve success, what sacrifices were required of you?
To achieve success, again, that same persistence that I talked about, a grit, I had to maintain that. I needed to make plans. Everybody has heard about budgets, making budgets. Well, every business does it. They call it a business plan. And if you're going to be successful with real estate and do it in any kind of reasonable time frame and reasonable effort, you need a business plan. And need to revisit that business plan on a regular basis to see how you're coming with it. Are you hitting your targets? Or if you're not hitting your targets, why not? And what can you do to start hitting them? Or should you change the targets? All those questions need to be answered. You need to be quick to come up with a plan, slow to change it. And if you do that and think of your investment as a business, as an investment company maybe, then build that and that's for you and it's yourself, then you have accomplished what you're going for.
Okay, so looking back, you had to make those sacrifices. Were they worth it to you?
At the time, some of the sacrifices were kind of tough to make. Not getting to go to some party or go to some weekend that I'd like to go on to. At the time, it was not rough is not the right word, but It was taxing, you know, but I knew what I was building toward. I knew what I needed to do that. And if a tenant called with a problem, I got on it. I didn't put them off for 3 or 4 days and had them mad at me and moved out in the middle of the night, or get into a court situation because they suing me for their security deposit.
Looking back, name 3 things you would do differently. This is a hard one.
Well, I would have probably started doing the real estate right out of college instead of working for somebody else.
So you try to get Dorsey to take another job doing something else with Chick-fil-A instead of going right into real estate investing.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because I knew when I changed, got out of doing work for somebody else and doing it for myself, I had to make it. I had to make it because I did not want to go back to that desk and working for somebody else and doing what they said or wanted me to do. And I've told a lot of people that you start building a portfolio and you start having investments that you can calculate your net worth on, all of a sudden you become a better employee for somebody else. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Because you don't mind telling that person what he can do with his job if they don't think that you're doing the right thing and you're not doing the job the way that they want you to do it. You can tell them you're doing it the way you think is best. And if they don't like it, they can take the job and shove it because you've got something you can fall back on. And surprisingly, people that thought that they wanted to get out enjoyed their job more working for somebody else because they did have that ability to tell them what they could do with the job if they didn't like the way they were handling it.
I never thought about that, but I know when I started as a real estate investor, I was working at Home Depot. And when they would go to write me up because I didn't do the clock, I'm like, well, just fire me.
Yeah.
And the people who actually needed that job,
oh yeah,
they would do anything not to be written up because that meant your raise.
That's
and
right.
I was willing to walk, and they didn't know how to deal with me.
Right.
But so I see what I didn't think about it along those lines, but I see it. So one of the things you would have done is you would have started investing right out of college. What else?
Right. If I was working with somebody else like I did, I would have put aside more capital to have as an emergency fund and investment fund much earlier than I did that. I used that extra capital to buy better furniture and go take a girlfriend on a trip or things that were nice but probably wasn't the best priority at the time. I would have totally reevaluated that because I've seen young people that are in their 20s get financially free by 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Just by stressing what was the priority and what would generate the income and build a net worth. So what else would I do if I had to start over again? Oh, I would have done business plan from the very beginning.
You had Dorsey do that right from the start.
Yeah.
You had her, and then y'all would do like quarterly reviews or.
Went out to nice restaurants, had a good dinner, talked, and then we'd pull out. We'd have the waitress clear the table. We'd pull out the business plan, and we'd go step by step through it. And she would tell me what she had planned to do, what she did do, and whether it was a success or she needed to get up to speed on some area that she had fallen down on, or should she change the plan, change one item in the plan. But yeah, we did that, quarterly meetings, sure did.
Who paid for the meal?
Oh, I paid for the meal.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if maybe she pulled out the old checkbook and went, let me put this on my company, Dad.
Yeah, no, she could have done that, and she's offered to do it before, but no, I pretty much buy all the meals for any time we go out. That's just something we do in my family.
Pete told the story at What Box last weekend. Someone asked him the question about when he made that first loan from his parents, and he went to go pay them back, and his dad went to him and said, no, You never
Pay
pay
it
back.
forward.
You only pay forward. And so, you know, when the child is loaned money, they're never expected to pay it back.
Yeah.
And that Dorsey, you know, raised her hand and then went up to Pete and said, "Now, Pete, how do I get my dad to latch on to this idea?"
Told her it wasn't going to happen. She was going to pay me back because I thought it was important for her to learn, not to be given, but to learn how to deal with the capital and have an obligation to pay it back.
Yeah.
Because she has a sister, and you know, we have made loans to her as well, to pay it back, and I just think it's important. You know, there's always it's all kind of different ways, different philosophies of raising kids and how you do that. It's just Pete and I have two different ways of looking at it.
Well, he has a socialist family organization. He'll say he
Sure.
loves socialization as long as it's his family and it's not coerced,
Right.
it's not forced. What's your best piece of advice for a starter? Someone who's looking at real estate investing, just getting started. If you could tell them, hey, this is what you need to focus on. This is my piece of advice for you. What would it be?
Okay, you need a little bit of education to get started. You don't have to have a lot, just a little bit. But as soon as you get started, you start buying, you start investing in property, you need to increase your education and learn. And out of every class or book that you read, you need to get at least a point or two that you implement that pays for that book or class that you took. And you can stop taking classes, but you're going to learn one way or the other. And it's going to be the hard knocks of the street, or you can go back to classes and learn from somebody else's problems, or from the education they learned from someone else.
How many classes did you take? I know that you've taught classes for a long time.
I took a lot of classes, and I still go to classes from time to time. Friends of mine teach when Pete teaches, and I'm close around. I went to a lot of Jack Miller's classes. I don't know how many classes I took, but quite a few. I know I went to 6 or 7 a year. I'm talking about weekend classes.
Yeah.
Classes.
Okay, how about for estate builders? Now they're in a different brand because they're out doing deals. They understand contracts.
Yeah.
Let's say they've done 40 or 50 deals.
A estate builder needs to go to a basic class from time to time, because you'll be surprised how many things and this is exactly what happened to me. I'd go to a class and it would be some basic information. You know, that worked for me and I haven't used it in years. I need to go back and do that again. I'll use that technique. And it also makes me think about deals I did and how I did them. Did I do them the most efficient way for the deal to be done, or should I have done something a little different? Made me a better investor. And an estate builder also needs to be continuing to learn opportunity zones. If they haven't ever done a 1031, they need to learn and do some 1031s. There's all kinds of things that you can learn, all the way up to learning fly fishing as a ender.
Well, one of the things that we want to add in as far as for estate building, and you might want to talk the importance of this, retirement accounts, because you have a class coming up on this, but this is one of those really important things, especially with the solos coming out.
Right.
Talk about that for a minute. Retirement
accounts are important. Retirement accounts can be used for a lot of purposes, retirement only being one of them. A retirement account can be used even before retirement by being a place that you can put additional funds that you've got. You can do investments in the retirement accounts, and you're totally outside the tax code. As a matter of fact, if you're successful in getting all of your retirement money and investment money into a Roth IRA or a 401k, you can have distributions and never even have to file a tax return on those distributions when you get 59 and a half or older. So I think the retirement accounts are something that need to be learned, and need to be learned early on, because you want to put cherry deals in your retirement accounts. deals that generate a significant amount of interest or capital gains for that matter.
Mm-hmm. We kind of already touched on this, and I don't know if your answer has changed. If you were starting over, one technique, what technique would you use?
Well, according to how you define technique, doing the mobile homes is a thing I would do. But if I were looking at the single-family houses, I would get very good at owner financing and talking to people, negotiating, trying to get deals that had owner financing in them.
Who are your best teachers?
Best teachers.
It doesn't have to necessarily be with real estate we're talking. I mean, just overall, your best teachers.
Oh, okay, interesting. I'd say they're in real estate. Jack Miller was inspired me a lot to do a lot of different things. Pete Fortunato on how to do deals, not necessarily deal techniques, but just on how to do deals, how to negotiate the deals, how to handle the property over a period of years, and then generate a deal after the deal.
Mm-hmm.
So he was I think that's the primary ones. Jimmy Napier taught me a lot about mobile homes and a lot about notes and mortgages, and had some great stories. You know, he was a storyteller. And I invested with Jimmy a time or two, as a matter of fact. It worked out good. But that's the main ones I would point to.
Okay, so you already know this, but in '97 I found you. So I was going to Georgia, and we had joined, and within 3 months there was a guru that sells a big enchilada program, and he was a sales pitch from one end to the other, and I tried to get my money back on Georgia. I was very angry that this is who, these are and it wasn't just the enchilada thing. There were several others that had been there too, and they're just selling program after program after program. And Georgia wouldn't give me my money back, which I'm very grateful for now. Very upset at the time, but very grateful for now, because probably in month 7 or 8 of that year, you were the speaker. And I sat down and listened, and Kim will tell you, I wrote in my notebook, I said, I don't know who this cat is, but whoever he is, I'm hitching my wagon to that horse. I said, he's my guy. You've been teaching for a long time. So when did you start teaching?
I went full time in '91, and I was president of Georgia in '91. And I had people calling from time to time in the evenings, because I was still working with somebody else right before I went full time, asking about corporations and LLCs weren't around then, but partnerships, limited partnerships. And so I talked to them through it over the phone what they needed to do, only because I had already set up my own corporation, the S Corporation, and I had been in some partnerships over the years. And so I said, I'll do a Saturday class on this. And so I did a little Saturday class, and it was well attended, and I got a lot of compliments on it. And then another guru that you were talking about wanted to do a class, and I did a class with him on the weekends, and I quickly severed that relationship because I didn't like some of the ways he dealt with other investors that he worked with. And so that's kind of how I got started. And then a national promoter asked me to come do a weekend. He was doing a boot camp on the weekend, and asked me to come talk about corporations, which I did. And then I started teaching on my own. And that's kind of how I got started. That was end of '91. First time I did a little class on it. That's when I started.
Thank you for starting to teach.
Oh.
Because again, Kim and I will always, when we're playing the what if, it's what if I didn't find you, because through you told me about Jack, and from Jack I met Pete, and from Pete, David Tilney and John Schaub, and
right,
that group of
all
people. From
guys.
that you can go to the next layer down, where I met Dimitri and I met Michael Jake, and just the best friends I have in the whole world.
Yeah.
all came from one day I went to your thing you taught at Georgia,
Yeah.
and it's amazing how the footpath traces backwards, and you just, when I sat on that meeting, I had no idea
Well,
how
appreciate
important
that.
you were going to become to me.
Well,
But
I tell people that if you want to learn something, really want to know it inside and out, so that it can't surprise you and you make your best deals with it, teach it. And that doesn't mean national teaching. I'm talking about just another person that you might take under your wing and teach them how to do it, or in a little subgroup that you might have with a RIA, or teach the RIA, do a Saturday class for the RIA. When you have to learn something to teach it, you learn the details, because you never know when that question is going to come up of some area that you hadn't been involved with yet, and so you'll learn the details in your research and your study.
I want to go ahead and get this memorialized while I'm on the thought process. But someone asked me, this isn't even recently, this was 5-6 years ago. They just said, you're friends with Dyches, and I said, yeah. And they said, how do you view him? And I said, he's the big brother I never had. You've always had my back. You've taken my phone calls, of which, you answer my questions, and God knows how many questions I've asked you over the years. Y'all can't see Dyches' face, but you had to see his eyes roll in the back of his head.
Certainly had plenty of them, though.
But I always want to say, and we're not at the end yet, we're getting there, but anyway, I just want to say thank you, because again, without you, Kim and I would not be where we are, and you played the biggest part. I mean, Jack was important to me, and Pete's been very important to me. David's been important to me, but for what you did for us and the time you took with us, and being there in the very beginning for us, this has been a really good life that we've lived and we're able to live. And without you, none of this would be happening. So,
I just gave you some ideas. You did it.
yeah. So we were talking about you teaching. What are some of the courses you teach?
That I have taught or am teaching now?
Both.
Well, I've kind of worked around in different areas. I've done a hard money lending class for 20-something years now. I've taught corporations, LLCs, Grand Plan, which is entity structures for your investments and how to live your daily life, where mail should come to, and that kind of thing. Then financing techniques, creative financing techniques. Did that class, just redid it here this past summer. Had the advanced strategies class that I did 26 years and just quit doing that and turned that over to John Heyer, who had taught with me for the last 5 years or so.
Pass your teaching this month.
Oh yeah, IRA class I've done with Pete for 21 years now. And it's really enjoyable teaching with Pete. You do that, so you know what I mean by that. He's a lot of fun, and he has still learn a lot when I'm up there with some of his deals. I'm sure there's something else.
You did the cruise for 8 years.
I did cruise for 8 years. I've done weekend philosophy and
Jekyll Island.
Jekyll Island business.
We did the
meeting.
Jekyll Island where they did the, what was it called? What's the name of the book?
The Federal Reserve.
No, it's Creature from Jekyll Island.
Yeah, Creature from Jekyll Island, which is the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, how it got formed and started, and you
Formed in
did it.
19
We were in the room where that meeting was held.
That's right.
So
Sure
that was a lot of fun. That was a heck of a little get together.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a hard one for you. You can only pick one. What's your biggest life lesson?
Treat people right. Do what you say you're going to do. Be the person that you think of in your mind when you're young. Be that when you grow older.
So looking back, what'd you do right?
What did I do right? Pick the right profession to get into in the housing. Went out and made something happen instead of waiting for something to come to me. Making friends and that are in the business as well. That's the biggest things.
What'd you do wrong?
What did I do wrong? Should have gone full time sooner. I could have done it. I just didn't think I could. Thought I had to have some more income on the side before I went. Should have just gone to doing the real estate right out of college. I don't feel like I did a lot wrong. Would have loved to have been multiple people, multiple me's, and done gone a lot different avenues, but everybody wishes that. Fantasy.
So what didn't you do that you wish you would have done? I know, these are the three hard questions.
What didn't I do that I wish I'd have done?
Yeah.
I wish I'd have just concentrated on building my rental portfolio first thing before I got into any of these other areas of real estate.
Why is that important?
Just because earlier the payoff would be better, quicker. I wish I'd learned 1031 sooner than I did, because I started out buying properties in poor areas, learned within the first 5 years that even though there's more cash earned for dollar invested in the poorer properties, that in the long run you make better and do better with a good suburban neighborhood property where people stay a lot longer and you don't have the hassles of rehabbing the property and re-renting the property and collections. You get much better quality people, and that helps your psyche so that you want to do more properties rather than having to worry about the properties you have so much. So I just wish I'd have started building that portfolio sooner. And if I'd have built that portfolio sooner and done the other things that I did a little later on, a few years later, after I had that good solid base, I would have accomplished a lot more and enjoyed it a lot more.
Yeah. How do people reach you?
I got a website, assets101.com. There's a contact us page that goes to myself, my assistant, and my daughter. So one of us gets back to people in a timely manner, hopefully. That's the best way to contact me.
Thank you, Dyches.
Thank you, Bill.